Okay, so welcome to the runner architecture. Pedro's going to talk us through the runner token architecture that we're adopting.
Okay, so I had thought about splitting this into 4 questions. The first of which is why are we changing the current token architecture? So the problem is that the current token architecture has many drawbacks. It has security concerns like not being possible to keep track of who registers a runner. And you have the registration token that is stored in namespace, project records, and so inadvertent disclosure is possible if you're serializing those records. This has also led to many follow-up patches, like the possibility to block new registrations at the group or project level, limits to the number of runners registered per group and project, because people just will register new runners per job and forget to delete them. And the current registration is kind of an anonymous God mode token, giving too many permissions to whoever holds it. You can basically register any kind of runner, be it protected or with any tags. Basically, there's no permissions model for it. And there's also no traceability, even though we can log. We recently started doing that. We started logging anytime that a runner is registered on GitLab, but we have no idea who created it. As long as you have this magic string of characters, anyone could be creating it. Yeah, what changes for the user? Not much. So for the user, the biggest difference is that they will need to pre-create the runner on the GitLab admin UI. So they will need to specify the tags, whether a runner is active or not, whether it's protected. Once the user has completed that step, they will get a command back, which they can use to register the runner. We will use the same register command. The only difference being that instead of using a registration token, we will be using a new style of authentication token. You will recognize it by the prefix. We will use a GLRT prefix. And this way, when the runner sees this new style of prefix or of authentication token, it will know not to call the usual endpoint to register a runner. It will just verify that the token is valid and then populate the config.toml with it. And then in the backend, what changes in GitLab is basically we're splitting the database definition of a runner. We have a table that is called CI runners, and that table contains everything about a runner nowadays. So you have both the configuration where you specify the tags, protected status, name, description, everything, including the IP address, platform architecture. Everything is in a single row. And so we're splitting stuff that is meant to be the configuration, stays in the CI runners table. And then we'll have a new table, which is the CI runner machines, which represents things like the IP address, the executor configuration, the GPU configuration, platform architecture, etc. Things that can change and will change many times. As you spin up like a new pod, it could have a different IP address and so on. But things that should only be configured by an admin, those will stay in the CI runners record. So another thing that changes is that every runner will have a unique system ID. And this is something that is persisted on a hidden file next to the config.toml. So anytime that you run the GitLab runner, it will check if this file is there. If not, it will generate a new unique system ID and store it. And this will be sent over to the GitLab whenever it's requesting for a job. This is the point when you poll for a job. This is the point where the server will look to see if it knows about this unique system ID. And if it doesn't, it will create a new CI runner machines record. Otherwise, it will just update the latest information with it, like if the IP address changed or platform or whatnot. So the last question I had is where are we at currently in this workflow? So after having gone through the deprecations, we also already prepared the GitLab runner to use the system ID. The last remaining task there is to label the Prometheus metrics with the system ID as well. We're currently at the stage where we're doing all the necessary database changes. And those are, some of them are really long-running tasks, because since we'll be changing the CI builds metadata table, which is one of the biggest tables we have, this is a job that needs to run over a weekend. It's programmed asynchronously. So like if I merge it today, it will only be available next week. So anything that you build on top of that will have to wait. And once this is finished, it should be done in this milestone. We'll actually start building the new UI to create the runners on 15.10. Yeah, and afterwards it will be mostly around creating a feature flag around this and exposing a setting to allow people to say, okay, from now on, I no longer want to allow the old way of registering runners. Yeah, we're getting pretty close to the point where this will start being visible to people, and people will start being able to use it. Any questions?
And I assume we'll deprecate the current way of doing it at some point.
Yeah, so in 16.0, we'll disable the current way. So basically set a flag saying that the old registration method is not available. People can still like ask us to enable, if it's in a self-managed, of course they can just enable the feature flag, or in gitlab.com, people can say, okay, this is really important. We need more time to work with this in the transition, so we can enable it for their namespace or project. And the removal itself will happen in 17.0.
You mentioned starting with the UI. Are we going to have a API endpoints that can be used as well?
It would be easy to do that. We'll only do that if like there's a strong demand from people. The nice thing is that what we're trying to achieve here is traceability. So even if we expose an API, if it's GraphQL, like a mutation in GraphQL, that will come with traceability already. So there's no problem in us exposing that.
Can you remind me of what the versions were? You said there was a version where we were going to make it default and then remove it.
Yeah, 16.0, we're going to default to not allowing registration
Okay.
token.
Mm-hmm.
Optional.
And when are you going to remove it?
Yeah, and remove it is in 17.0.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I think API for that is now off the plan unless someone explicitly asks for it.
I mean, it's not like the roadmap doesn't include it. We do mention it in the blueprint that it's possible that we could work on something like this. But unless people ask for it and give good use cases, this will be just a follow-up task to do at some point when we get requests for it.
Like we already got a lot of requests about that. People are complaining about how registration works and that they want to automate that in some way. And like we've discussed this when preparing the blueprint. There is already a need for users to be able to automatically manage how the runners are created. So like in my opinion, this API at some moment needs to be published. Like I'm totally okay with not making this a priority right now and just focusing on UI and moving this thing forward. It's okay. Like right now you still need to do some things manually, like go and get the registration token. So with the new way, you will need to go and define your new runner and get the authentication token. But we've already had a lot of requests in past from users to make runner creation in automatic way easier. So this just should be in the plan somewhere for the future.
So you're saying even with the registration token, people were already requesting for a better way to create runners?
Yeah, because right now you can get registration token and you can automate creation. Like our health chart is an example of that, right? Example. You copy the registration token once, and then create your own automation around Helm chart that allows you to quickly get you a new runner, which is automatically registered with any set of tags that you want, with any configuration that you want. The problem on our side is that we can then get these thousands, tens of thousands of runner registers that are usually not clean, but people are already using it. And I remember at least several requests to make it easier to do that for automatic ways. When we started talking about changes in how the token works, one of the first responses was that, okay, if you want to mess something here, I'm automatically managing like hundreds of runners. I need to be able to do it still after whatever you will change. So
do we have an issue or anything tracking the demand?
I will
we
not
have a
point
feedback
you to
issue. So I can copy the link.
Because I'm curious, you mentioned that people are really interested in the API endpoints and automation. I'm curious if we've been capturing that anywhere. Is that something Darren might be keeping track of?
What was the question, David?
As far as API endpoints and automation for the new registration token method, are there any issues or any way that we've been capturing the demand for that people want this and how they want to use it?
I think this feedback issue was meant to be that, but
yeah, it might have been. We have we kind of don't need it. There's one major customer who's going to dictate this basically, and I just remembered we're recording, so I'm not going to say who there. But there's one major customer who we work with really closely that has a lot of automation and daily does a tear down and reset up of all their runners. And so we want to document it for sure, but I think they're kind of serving as a really good canary for those cases. Like they need to be able to do everything automated.
Yeah,
good questions.
What I was saying about requests from the past, like I don't remember any issues, but I remember a few discussions with customers where things like that were brought up. So I'm automatically managing runners, and the current registration is not very good for that. This was one of the problems I remember from the discussions in the past. The second one discussed with someone was that if you're going to change how this works, please make sure that we can still automatically manage the runners.
We have a call with that specific customer either next week or the week after to walk through exactly this with them. So FYI, Pedro, look for that in your account.
Cool.
Yeah,
It'd be really nice to hear back, like in general, what their opinion is. I would expect that they're going to ask for the API. I mean, pretty much every UI needs an API. Like, you know, cloud providers, Kubernetes, everything you expect every UI to come with API. So I would expect that there would be sufficient demand to really push this to the top of the priority list.
Yeah, if this isn't usable by that customer, this is like, we either have to then iterate to make it usable and like not be able to turn off the legacy version, or it's just not done.
I mean, the GraphQL mutation that I'm going to have to build for Miguel to expose this in the front end is kind of the API we're talking about. The only thing we don't have is a REST version of that, which is maybe what people are expecting. So we would need to build a REST version anyway for that.
Vinny, I think you have a question. Your hand's been up for a little bit.
Yes. So yeah, my question is, when you were presenting, you said we will be able to specify tags to when registering a new runner. So
Yeah.
what I want to understand, is it the tags we currently use a tag list when we create a runner, or is it another type of tags? Just to
No, yeah. So right now, when you're registering a runner, you specify the tags. That won't be possible if you're using a new style authentication token to register it.
Okay.
This will have been done already through the UI, so you can't change it afterwards with the register command.
Okay.
Those will kind of be deprecated. So eventually that will be removed from the register command, the possibility to pass, you know, tag list, protected, things like that.
Okay.
So it sounds like they're the same tags. You just have to provide
Yeah.
them up front with all the
Yeah.
traceability.
Okay.
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 Will you be able to modify the tags after the fact?
If you're an admin and you go to the edit, sure. In the UI, you can, just not remotely through GitLab runner.
Cool. Pedro, I was just going to mention, I was chatting with Jessie Young a couple of weeks ago, who is, do you know her already? Have you already talked with her?
Yeah. No,
Okay.
I haven't talked directly. No.
Okay. She might be worth, if you end up doing a bunch of API token stuff, you might just go chat with her, because she's a staff engineer in authentication. And she says, and I quote, "Tokens are my life." So
Okay.
it might be helpful to, you know, if there's any GitLab wide considerations for auth, especially on the API level.
Even if there's not, that just sounds like the right person to talk to if you're doing anything about implementing new or thinking about new tokens or new types of tokens. Like,
yeah, if nothing else,
I want to talk to anyone.
Yeah, go.
Anyone who even makes a statement like that, I just want to talk to them to see what they're doing.
I think
Cool. Any other questions or like comments or thoughts? I'm kind of curious about how this plays out, or in the Kubernetes space, because we also we run a lot of stuff in Kubernetes. What are the implications for our K8s distribution, Pedro?
do you mean like around the like Helm and operator, or actually just
because
once
like
you've gotten past that point.
so does anything change for me as a Kubernetes operator? Like for right now in Kubernetes, I don't actually haven't used it much. I assume that I take the registration token and I put it into a Kubernetes secret. And then when my runner starts up, it registers itself automatically by pulling this token from however I bind the secret and calling GitLab. Does that change?
Yeah, the only thing that changes is that instead of using a registration token, you're using the authentication token. So what you won't be able to do is like register any kind of runner with tags that are not known previously. So you will have to, like every other runner, you'll need to pre-create it, and then you can only register runners that exist.
So I know that every runner that starts up and registers itself with this registration token will generate its own unique machine ID. So that will sort of now be creating, instead of creating a bunch of rows in the CI runners table, it'll create a bunch of rows in the CI machines table.
Yeah.
Does that appear differently in the UI anywhere or through the API? Like, will Kubernetes even care about that?
I'm not. I don't have the idea that this will matter, other than how we show it in the UI. So basically, we could show a collection of like platforms. Let's say you're reusing the same runner definition across 3 or 4 platforms. We could show a comma-separated list of platforms where we've seen this being run.
Yeah, the main need for this unique ID was to support our long pooling algorithm, which needs to track some information about the machine. Pedro, I have a follow-up for what Joe was asking, because for Helmshot, the change here will be quite easy. We already support both ways. We will just remove the way to register the token. Are we on top with that with operator? Is operator even able to use authentication token instead of registration one?
I'm not familiar with that. I will have to defer to Tunia on the operator.
So as far I can tell, on the operator, we have the ability to set both registration token and the token. So I believe that in that specific case, we will remove all the registration token part and just go only with the token. The way it has been done now, the token is not like mandatory. So if you don't set it and you have a registered token, it just works. So it will just change the logic for what I've understood so far.
Okay, so it seems it works exactly like for the Helm chart. So
exactly.
It's okay for me.
Elliot, what's this going to do to the RunnerIncept?
I don't know yet.
We have to go deeper.
I don't know yet, but you know what it is? It is going to exercise the hell out of this functionality once we're able to.
I think RunnerIncept will be the first customer that needs API access for that.
Well, no, only once the legacy method is turned off. Because if we have both methods, that will be fine.
But at some moment we plan to turn it off on GitLab.com. At some moment we plan to remove it. So
fun fact, we have actually regressed the registration functionality before. Like I don't know, like 14.2 or something like that. Registration was broken. And so the fact that Incept does registration in so many different forms and flavors is actually a test within itself that we didn't previously do. Because on .com, when you guys update the runners there, we don't re-register them, right? So I don't. Good question. I'm terrified to try and wrap my head around.
We could enable the feature flag for an exception for that project, but probably we also want to get this firsthand experience.
Yeah, definitely. We should use it a lot.
Yeah,
I put lots of words in there earlier in the notes. So sorry.
Yeah,
Do
I'm
we
sure
have any
most of them.
automated? Do we have any like functional automated testing that uses the UI that we could put some sort of testing in?
So we do have some end-to-end tests with like, what's that thing that you use for a web end-to-end test? This was like my whole life for a long time. Selenium kind of thing.
Selenium, yes, yes, XML.
Cool.
Yeah. So we have some stuff like that. That's a lot of what the quality team does. And so all the end-to-end tests for the main GitLab project exist in that sort of thing. So we have a few, not a ton, because there's not really a ton you can do in the runner UI right now in that capacity. I think we actually literally have an open question, an open issue to add a test to like make sure the page loads. Because again, another trivial regression that we accidentally introduced. But they do exist, and you can build on them.
It's a good time to level up our test coverage.
Every time's a good time to level up your test coverage.
Every
Except for
time
maybe
is a
like
good
day
time.
one, like, you know, get something.
Except for Saturday. Saturday's not a good day.
So we don't actually have any headless browser Selenium type tests in our GitLab runner project though.
No, because there's also no web UI in the GitLab runner project.
Cool.
Can you provide me a link to those Selenium tests if you can find them, Elliot?
I can't. I can just ping
Okay.
Zeph in the Slack
Okay.
channel and
I'm kind of
tell him.
curious.
It'll make his day. Hey, people are interested in seeing the test. Can you show him? And he'll like. He's probably gonna think I'm trolling him, but I'll do that right now.
All right, cool.
And then I'm actually gonna drop off this because I have another call.
Okay.
And I know it's a lot
Joe,
heavier
you
lift,
would
but
need
it
to-
seems like. Go ahead. Sorry.
Joe, you would need to scan for Selenium in Rails, GitLab Rails repository. It's somewhere in the spec, but it's
slash QA, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
all
something
right.
like
All right.
that.
Or
I was thinking if we had something similar to RunnerIncept where you have a separate pipeline and another repo that could run specifically GitLab runner UI tests, that could be useful, but it'd be a heavier lift.
Yeah, there's a QA/spec folder.
okay, cool. I do like that Rails is super monolithic and everything's just in there somewhere. Cool. All right. So hopefully we'll hear back about like whether or not the API is really like 100% have to do, you know, talking to custom customers and also based on our experience in the Incept project. Any other concerns that come to the top of mind or thoughts? Do you have fuzz testing on this?
No.
It sounds like it won't change like our workflows very much. Like having, you know, our runners registered locally to run our tests on whatever.
Yeah.
That's good.
Regarding the API, there was talk about building a layer on top of the GraphQL. So to make it possible to automatically expose GraphQL mutations as REST APIs. But yeah, for now, we still have to do that manually too. So even though we're going to have to build the GraphQL version, yeah, it won't be automatically exposed as REST, and we'll have to do it ourselves.
Okay, cool. I actually didn't realize that we were going to have to build the GraphQL version. Why do we have to build the GraphQL version? Who's using GraphQL? What is GraphQL?
So the front end, everything that you see happening in the admin runners page or group runners page, everything is built in GraphQL.
Okay.
So all the communication with the backend is done through GraphQL.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so basically that's my life is like whenever there's a new
your life is
request.
GraphQL.
Yeah, basically.
Nice.
Whenever there's a new request, I build the GraphQL query, and then Miguel builds the front end for it.
Cool. Does the GLab command line tool use GraphQL as a client, or is it using the REST API?
The what? Sorry?
GLab. The GLab command line tool.
I'm not. I've used it, but I don't know. I haven't looked inside.
Okay, I use it all the time to look at my logs, like rather than go to the UI.
I use it as well, and that issue I filed against the not tags not working was been fixed.
Oh, cool.
From what I remember, it uses the REST API, and it uses another open source project which has an official Go API support for like integration for GitLab API.
Yeah.
But the rest,
I think we recently announced that GLab is our officially supported command line tool, right? So, yeah, cool.
GraphQL is so much more efficient. It's ideally we'd use it as much as possible.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a note to go read more about it.
Yeah, our tooling is really great in support of GraphQL. Like, it will examine the whole tree that you're requesting. So, like, if you have a project and then from a project you're asking for runners, it can preload all those relationships in SQL.
So will it automatically optimize away n+1 queries?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I like to add those to my project. Cool. So it sounds like we're starting to wind down on this topic. We could do either call it now, or we could go with our second topic for discussion, which was nesting in Mac OS runners in AWS. I kind of feel like that's a pretty big topic.
I don't want to be a pessimist.
What?
Yeah, I was gonna
go
say,
ahead, hit me, Davis.
I was gonna like, I don't want to be a pessimist, but I'm not sure we have time for starting that one up unless we just, give it an intermission of a couple weeks.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so we'll do that one next time. I think that's it then. So we can follow up on chat. I'll upload this video and post the link to on our notes page here. And thanks a lot, Pedro. I appreciate you going through that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hope it was helpful.
Yeah, totally.
Thank you, Pedro.